Hey guys, so in today's video I picked up this 80s model Mercury 25. Now this is the predecessor to a lot of the motors that I worked on in the past in my videos, so you'll see a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. But I actually only picked up this motor for about $100, and so I'm going to try to keep it really cheap in this video and see if we can get it running. If you guys have been liking the videos, please smash the like button down below as it helps me a lot, guys. And hit that subscribe button. It's free and you guys will get updates every time I post a video. So with that being said, let's do a spark compression test and see if we can get this motor running. Okay, so the first thing I noticed with this motor is there's a lot of chew marks. So this motor had mice nests under the cowling. They chewed all this wiring up. A lot of these are the kill switch wires coming from the CDI to the switches. But this is an easy fix. I'm just butt connect them together and fix up all this wiring. You actually see part of this debris all down here from the nest. In the past, it's pretty messy down here. You can also see here, these are the two wires, and this motor doesn't have a rectifier on it, but this comes underneath the stator. So if you had a rectifier on the motor, this would actually charge up the batteries and keep your batteries charged up. But in this case, all we can do now is just fire up the engine, and the battery will not charge off of the motor. But if you get a rectifier, you just mount it down there, and you connect those two wires. Now this wire here, this red wire, it's also it has a lot of stripping going on. You can also see here, some of the trigger wires are chewed up. So we're just going to fix all this wiring up and get this wiring all situated. So the first thing I'm going to do is start replacing some of this wiring. So you can see a lot of these are butt connected, but I don't have butt connects. So what I might do is use a spade terminal, so that way I can still disconnect the kill switch. You can see these ones were chewed off completely where they used to be connected. So a lot of these I might just straight butt connect, fix up the wiring, put some heat shrink over the wiring, because it looks like they just took off the outer casing of the wire, not the actual wire itself. In other cases, I would probably say just replace the wire, but we're going to keep this cheap and just fix up the wiring as best as possible. And another thing I'm going to have to check out is the pull string. Now, this is electric start, so it will work with just a button, but this pull string is also supposed to be an emergency pull. But I can see here, it's not locked up or anything like that, so it's got to be either the recoil starter or something's got to be in there that's causing it not to recoil back. Without that being said, though, what we see down here is the starting solenoid. Now you have the main power on the right side and then the ground on the left side. Now this main power wire is the power wire for the switch on your handle. So this is your starting switch. So when you push that button, it goes to the solenoid right here on this side. So this is the main hot coming in. But you can see here, again, I want to fix the wiring just because it's a little chase. Now these two top studs, one's a ground and one is the actual start circuit. So the yellow red with the red stripe goes there, and that's actually what activates the solenoid to release. And all I'm doing here is adding some heat shrink to the wire to enclose that exposed wire. I'm going to do this for a bunch of them. I'm not going to really talk about all the wiring that I did just because it is pretty self-explanatory. If you know wiring, you know what I'm talking about. But I use heat shrink for everything, so I'm just going to replace some of the ring terminals, heat shrink it, and fix up all the wiring. And once I get all that done, I'll kind of go a little bit over about everything that I did with it. So I'll just let it play out, and then I'll be back with you guys in a couple seconds. Okay, so now I'm done all the wiring fixing. All I just did is I added two battery cables. So you can see this main red one, it comes into the starting solenoid onto the right side. You want to mount that, and also the red wire for the other starting switch. And you can see the ground, I just mounted it right to the starter bolt, and they'll be fine. And you can see here, I just fixed some of the wiring. I used some butt connects with heat shrink and a spade terminal so I can remove the kill switch if I need to still. What we're going to do now is a compression test and see how healthy the power head is. Now on this top cylinder at about 130 pounds, which is really good compression for these engines. And on the bottom cylinder, we had about 140 pounds of compression. So we have really good compression on both cylinders. Next, we're going to do is a spark test and see if we have good proper spark on the cylinders. Again, all you want to see is 2 solid sparks between the gaps to verify that we have good spark on the power head. And as you guys can see, we have very solid spark on each cylinder. So the next thing that we're going to do is pop off the carburetor and tear it open and get the fuel situated. Okay, before we take off the carburetor, the first thing I did notice about this is that you can see on here on the side, this is where how the throttle gets controlled. So you can see how much slop and play is in my tiller handle. So if I shift them forward and go to max forward, I should have max opening in my carburetor. What's happening on this engine, as you can see, this roller is not going all the way back, see, as it needs to be pushed up. What's happening is the butterfly is not opening all the way, it will never run correctly. So what we're going to have to do is somehow adjust it. Probably going to tighten up the cables in order to get to where it needs to be. You can actually see here, there's a little notch on the side to make it work. But what I'm talking about is we can tighten up the cables. You can see how much slop and play is on this cable right now. Needs more tension. So what we can do is tighten up the top and the bottom, and it'll give us more tightness. And when we twist the handle, it'll open the butterfly even farther than where it's at right now. So all you need is a 10 mil, or I believe it's a 3/8 or 7/16. I can't remember exactly. Wrenches, and all you want to do is spin the top nut out, so left, and then the top nut right, and what this does is creates tension on that cable, and it'll allow the butterfly to open up more. So you can see here I have a lot of slop. I'm going to open it up a lot, and all I'm going to do is twist the nut into as if I'm tightening the nut, and this is just going to create enough tension on the cable to get what we need to happen. You can see here there is some little tension, but I just want to test it and make sure it works first before we go any farther. But you do want to have pretty much a lot of tension on this cable to get what we are looking to get out of it. So you see still I'm not getting the max throttle that I can get, so I'm still just going to tighten the cable. And eventually what you're going to find out is that when you open the tiller handle all the way open, what you see now is the butterfly is completely closed. When I go to max open throttle, you'll see that butterfly will be perfectly horizontal, allowing the max airflow and max gas to come to the engine. And when you come to neutral position, obviously the butterfly will be completely closed. So that being said, what we're going to do now is pop off the carburetor. So it's pretty much the same way of doing all the other ones in my videos. It's just the older school version. So there's not really the spring and stuff like that compared to like the old ones, but works all the same way. You see here, you pull out the plunger, it shoots raw gas right into the carburetor and runs. You see here, now someone broke these. This was an old design of how they used to do them. When they break a lot. So a lot of times you'll see guys, they'll zip tie them like this. This still works and everything, but when you are doing this, just be careful not to break this. But if you were to break it, you can just use a zip tie and it will work perfectly fine. So yeah, first thing we're going to do as usual is pop off the incoming fuel line. We're going to cut this zip tie. We're going to remove this mounting nut, which is a 13 mil, and there's actually another one hidden. So what we're going to have to do is remove the starter. It's just 2 10 mils, so it'll pop right off. You'll just have to remove your ground stud as well. And then there's a nut that's located down below. You can't actually get a socket on it or anything like that. So you have to remove the starter in order to get it off. And then you just have to remove these 2 bolts in the front, which holds this plastic assembly for the choke. And once you get that all done, the carburetor is ready to come off. So let's pop off the carburetor and get up on the bench. Okay, so now we got the carb completely taken apart. All we're going to do now is stick it in ultrasonic cleaner and get this carb looking brand new, and then we're going to rebuild it. So let's get in the tank. So while the carburetor is cooking in the ultrasonic cleaner, I was working on this, and I was able to figure out why the recoil starter wasn't, recoiling back. So basically, if you just looked under here with a flashlight, you can just see right there, right under the flywheel, there's a piece that is lodged right between the flywheel and the housing of the recoil starter. So all I had to do was pretty much just put my finger in there and grab it. This is like a grommet meant to protect the rope from fraying up and stuff like that, and it looks like it just came loose. So you can see here the recoil starter works perfectly fine, and I just moved that grommet. I'm going to push it back in place where it's supposed to be, and now the recoil starter works. Okay, so we just got the carb out of the ultrasonic cleaner. It turned out looking great as usual. Now I'm not going to go really in depth of rebuilding these carbs. I've rebuilt these carbs multiple times on the channel. Again, they were on different engines, but exactly the same basis and the same principles. All this pretty much the same carburetor. So I'm just going to fly through this. I'm going to have the parts listed down below as usual. Other than that, we'll get this finished and mount it back on the engine. Now, this is a pretty key part when we're building carbs. I did take this out. Originally, when I was taking the carb apart, I counted how many times it spun in for the idle mixer screw. So what I'm going to do now is just spin it in until it lightly seats, and then I'm going to spin out about 1.5 turns, and I'm going to start there and work my way out. And then just like that, the carb is all reassembled and looks really good. So what we're going to do is reassemble this back onto the engine and do some diagnostics onto it and see if we can get it running. And I just want to mention this to you guys. If you get the same carb kit as me, you will get 2 mounting gaskets. The one you want to use is this one. This is meant for the 20 and the 25s. The other one I have is meant for the 99s and the 15s. So just don't use the wrong one when you're mounting the carburetor. guys, so it is the next day. I ended up getting everything reattached. You know, I reattached the hose because I did lose, my battery died last night, so unfortunately I couldn't show you guys the rest, but you know, just connected the hose. I zip tied this fitting because it was broken, and then of course I reinstalled the starter, which is the 2 bolts, and reconnected all the wires. So what I'm going to do now is just throw 2 new spark plugs in it, and I'm going to just fire it up and see how it runs, and then if it runs pretty good, I'll do a water pump on it, but I just want to make sure it runs okay before I go ahead and do the water pump. So let's hook it up to water and fire it up after we change out the spark plugs. So let's change out the spark plugs and then we'll run it. So you guys can see here, I unspun the 90-degree fitting where the water is supposed to come out of the telltale, and you can see it's clogged up with all this mud and dirt. So just take a pick and clean it out, and reinstalled it, and it should pump perfectly fine as long as the impeller's not messed up or anything like that. But this tends to happen a lot with mud daubers and other dirt and debris that gets picked up. Plus, this motor hasn't run about 10 years. Okay guys, so now we know the motor runs correctly. What we're going to do now is the water pump on this motor. So let's drop the loader unit and get it done. Now the first thing we have to do is release the shift linkage. So you can see as I shift it into forward and neutral and reverse. I did this in neutral because I made the easiest. All you have to do is spin out this little screw all the way out. And at the very end there's a little pin. You can just pull the pin right out that connects the shift linkage to the actual power head itself. And once you get that pin out, as you can see here in a sec, what will happen is that the shift linkage is now free, and once you drop the 4 bolts on the bottom, the lower unit will drop. And once you remove all the bolts, the lower unit will pull off really easily. Now I'm not going to go too much into rebuilding this gear cage just because I've done these multiple times on my videos. So I'm just going to let it play out, and if you guys have any questions, just drop it down in the comment. I'm gladly to answer for you guys. But I will say this one thing: a lot of times these motors, the water pickup tube will come with it, so you just got to put this back up into the engine. Now you see in this upper housing for the water pump, there's a very deep scratch where the water pump was rotting. You need to make sure you replace this housing, because what will happen is that it will start sucking air and overheating the water pump. We actually have the exact same thing happening on the bottom housing of the plate, which is called the face plate. And again, you just want to make sure that's fixed, or else what will happen is you'll start sucking air and the water pump will overheat, or you'll have damage happening to your engine. And of course, once you get all the gaskets removed, use this gasket scraper, get all the old gasket off, and then you're ready to run your new gaskets. So now that I got the lorry all back together and properly hooked up, all I'm going to do now is just make sure it shifts correctly. So right now I am in neutral, and if I'm spinning the prop shaft and shift it into forward, I lock into forward, and then you know it's forward because it'll ratchet the other way. And then again, if I just keep spinning the prop, go back to neutral, and then I can shift into reverse. Now reverse is only a gear that will lock both ways, so you won't be able to spin the prop unless you force it to go. So all we're going to do now, since this is all fixed, all we're going to do is just replace one of the wires underneath the starter. And then after that, we're just going to take it over to the lake and test run it. So this is the wire that I replaced. Just the old one that was just getting a little flimsy and bendy. And then the water's being exposed here. So I just figured I'd just replace this wire and just be done with it. Okay guys, so that's going to wrap up the video today. This motor ran excellent. I kept this under $500. I got this motor for very cheap, and I was able to get it running and get it perfectly running as it needed to be in order to be reliable. If you guys have been enjoying my videos, please smash the like button down below, as it does help me out, guys. And subscribe so you don't miss any further content in the future. You get alerts and everything like that whenever I post a video, and it's free if you ever want to cancel. Without that being said, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next video, and we'll see what engine next we can get running.